Welcome into 88.3 The Buzz live from St. Bonaventure University with Nick Rohloff and Tyler Smith on the Director's Cut. And Tyler, this is a special show today because not only are we kicking off our remote radio row, Super Bowl week, but we are also live streaming on Twitter and Facebook Live on WSBU. So if you're listening out there, you can tune in and watch us talk on Facebook and Twitter for now. So tune into that. But exciting things coming to the Buzz now, so that's great. And not only exciting things for the Buzz, but exciting things for our show. We got a jam-packed show. Mike Vaccaro, St. Bonaventure alum, joining us around 6:45. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about before that. And we'll start with a blockbuster trade happening Saturday night that no one expected to be happening this early. Tyler, I couldn't believe it.
Matt Stafford, if you weren't aware, has been traded from the Lions. He's been there since 2009, and now he's a member of the Los Angeles Rams, pairing up with Sean McVay in an electric offense, an electric whole roster. But it took a lot.
It did take a lot. A lot of people were saying that they overpaid. They gave up 2 first-round picks, 2022, 2023, a third in this year's draft, and then obviously Jared Goff. What are your thoughts on what they gave up?
Well, 2 firsts and a third carries a lot of weight in the NFL. Honestly, first-round picks in the NFL matter more, in my opinion, than any other sport. It seems like when teams are making trades in the NFL, they're so reluctant to give up a first-round pick. If you look at the NBA, teams will give up first-round picks all the time, albeit sometimes with protections, or if they're already in a good position, they have no problem giving up first-round picks because they'll be late in the first round. But NFL teams, there's obviously tons of value at the end of the first round, and teams are very reluctant to give that up. So this was a great return by the Lions. Obviously, you get a quarterback in return. Jared Goff isn't the worst quarterback in the NFL. He has a hefty contract, but you do get those 2 firsts because the Lions only had 5 picks in this draft. They only do have 5 picks in this draft, and they haven't secured a lot of draft capital from other teams as of late. They're not really a super active team in the trade market. So this provides them with safety blankets because, again, they're playing in Detroit. Not a lot of free agents. It's not a super attractive free agent destination. So teams like that, you have to really build to the draft. So I believe that the Lions really got a good return on this one.
And with all likelihood, they're going to go into a big rebuild because obviously they just got rid of their quarterback, number 1 overall pick back in the day. They get back a number 1 pick in Goff, but obviously not even close to the same caliber of player, in my opinion. And they're probably losing their top 2 weapons. Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay are both free agents. Likely with Stafford out, they won't be coming back. So you're going to be on the lookout to see what this team does with the draft. Do they trade up to in the top 3? We heard that the Lions might want to use the draft capital they got from Stafford to move up from 7 to try to get either Wilson or Justin Fields in that top 3. I think we remember last year in the draft, there was a lot of anticipation for trades, surprising picks. We didn't get that much of trading. I think this draft, you're going to see a lot of trading because you got teams like New England. Are they going to move up for a quarterback? I doubt it, but it's possible. And then you got the Lions, the Panthers. It's drafting 7th, 9th. Are they going to want to move up for a quarterback? And it all plays in with the Stafford trade. And I agree with some people that the Rams, in a vacuum, gave up too much. But with the circumstances surrounding the Los Angeles Rams, I think this was 100% worth it.
No, I absolutely agree. The way Jared Goff seemed pretty limited in the Rams' offense with his production. Obviously, Matt Stafford has been one of the most productive quarterbacks statistically since he came into the league. He hasn't had any help on defense on a single roster of his career. He hasn't had an offensive line in about 5 years. So, he's been taking a pretty big beating. So I envision that he'll be comfortable in LA, but there are concerns. He does have upper body injury history with his shoulder, rotator cuff, and a few other ailments as well. So that's something to look out for as he is past 30, but at a quarterback of his skill set, that's just your prime.
When this trade happened, I started thinking, what did the Rams get in terms of quarterback tier? I think he's in that 3rd quarterback tier, but that 3rd quarterback tier is still top 10 in my opinion. I ran through the my top 10 quarterbacks. I believe I had him around 9th or 10th, And if you think about this Rams team, they are so talented. You saw the defensive numbers. Either their top three defense, no matter if you want to have the Bucs won, the Rams won, or the Steelers won. Those three are the probably top three consensus defenses. The Rams defense is something else. You got obviously the best interior lineman we've seen, and you could argue ever. I don't think that he's the best ever, but one of the most dominant ones that we've seen in this generation. And then you got Jalen Ramsey. The offensive line is there. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Cam Akers, the rookie back, who just had a great stretch down the last 4 or 5 games this season and into the playoffs. And you add a quarterback that can make almost every throw on the football field. You saw McVay have to script Goff. I think Goff was a product of McVay's system. Stafford, he can be a system. I think this team is automatically now, with Stafford at QB, vaulted into a top 5 team in the league next year. And they'll be definitely, I think, in my opinion, if nothing changes, the NFC favorite for next year. I mean, that could change if the Bucs win on Sunday, though. They might be favored to repeat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bucs are going to return a lot of players. Now the Rams, like this is what you're saying right now is relative to this coming season for Los Angeles. Now you gave up a lot. The Rams haven't picked in the first round since Jared Goff was drafted number 1 overall. Now they don't have another pick this year and the 2 following due to this trade. If it doesn't work out, if things go south in Los Angeles, they'll be pretty stuck for a little bit, and that won't work out so well. We'll be looking back at this trade as an absolute win for the Lions. But with the coaching system they have right now and the roster, that doesn't seem like it's going to happen, but obviously it's the NFL. Things can change on any given Sunday. Yeah,
and you're right about the NFL. And you mentioned that they haven't had a first-round pick since they picked Goff first overall back in 2016. It's an interesting strategy because you mentioned how in the NBA you could see teams ship out a lot of picks to get that star caliber player. Mm-hmm. And they did that for Ramsey. They now did it for Stafford, send out a couple firsts. Is it worth it? Obviously, they haven't won since they've traded for Ramsey, and obviously they haven't played a season with Stafford yet. But I think it was the smart move because they were stuck with Goff's contract, and it was kind of clear in my eyes that, yeah, he's an average quarterback. He will never put a team over the hump to win a Super Bowl. And they had a golden opportunity in 2018. Their defense only gave out 13 points against the Patriots, and Goff and company couldn't get it done on the offensive end, only scoring 3 points in a Super Bowl. I know he was going against a defensive masterpiece of Belichick.
Top defense.
I don't think Goff could have got it done. I think it was worth it. That's just me.
Oh, I absolutely believe you had to make this deal. Jared Goff wasn't going to win anything. And in the NFL, like I said, windows close very quickly. And honestly, when the Rams went to the Super Bowl and then they missed the playoffs the next season, I kind of thought the window was done. Then they made the move for Ramsey. Now they're making the move, shipping out Jared Goff for Matt Stafford. And that, like you said, vaults them back into Super Bowl contention, albeit Matt Stafford's only under contract for the next 2 years, and he'll be an unrestricted free agent after that. And he'll also be 35 years old. Remember, this coming season is going to be his age 33 season. So obviously he's getting up there in age, but as a pocket passer, I'm not too worried about that. What I am, worried about, or not for that matter, is his contract. He's only making $20 million next year and $23 million the year after that. So that's actually a pretty big bargain for a quarterback of his stature.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is why when you see and people say that the Rams overpaid, they probably would have only had to throw in a first and a third in Goff if the salaries lined up between him and Goff and Stafford. The reason why they had to do 2 firsts when everybody else that wanted Stafford was only offering 1, maybe not even 1. I know the Colts didn't even offer 1. I think they only offered 2. I think I saw that. 2 second rounders instead of a 1. I think I saw that out there. But that's why. Goff's contract was so big and Stafford's was not that big. When you look at the salary,
It almost warranted that extra first-round pick.
Yeah, it was necessary.
Yeah, it's kind of like trading away Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook in the NBA. It's a terrible contract, and it requires more on the other team.
And you see that more in the NBA than you do in the NFL, is that if you're trading away a player with a big contract, you have to add a pick with it because that team won't want to take that contract on. 100%. The NFL, you don't see that much because the players don't really make that much money, and if you're as much compared to the NFL, unless you're a quarterback. And if you're trading away a player of that caliber, that usually doesn't happen in the NFL. Like, you don't see blockbuster trades happen with bad players with bad contracts.
And you really don't see blockbuster trades happen between quarterbacks, especially starting quarterbacks. Now, we talked about Matt Stafford this whole time, but what does this mean for Jared Goff and the Lions? I'm looking at the Lions depth chart right now, and I'm going through the defense specifically. Obviously, Jared Goff plays in the side of football, but the only player I could actually tell you that I knew was in the NFL on this entire defense is Jamie Collins, and he's been on a decline for a minute now. Deron Harmon, obviously a former Patriot. Justin Coleman, former Seahawk, and then they also obviously have Jeff Okudah, who went on IR, their first-round pick last season. There's not a lot to look forward to on that defense. And on the offensive side, Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, two of the plethora of wide receivers that will be entering free agency this season. You have DeAndre Swift, T.J. Hockenson. Those are two young pieces that work really well in that offense. And the O-line, last year was pretty shaky. Not too bad, but it doesn't look like this Detroit roster will be making any type of noise, and they'll probably be picking right where they are this year again.
They'll be picking higher.
Probably higher.
I think that Goff is in for a rude awakening. Some people questioned him after his rookie year because he didn't look that good. But he had Jeff Fisher as his coach. And then they made the move for Sean McVay, and boom, there you go. Goff looks like a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people said that is because of McVay, and I think they're going to be proved 100% correct this next season because they're not going to have a lot of weapons for Goff unless they draft someone at pick 7. But if you look at this Lions team, they need more help on defense than they do on offense. I know they're probably going to lose Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay. That's all likelihood. If one of them resigns, I would be shocked, absolutely stunned. But like you said, you're going to have DeAndre Swift and you're going to have T.J. Hockenson with Goff.
Maybe you draft a receiver.
That's what they'll need to do. Now, will they do it at pick 7? No. They'll have the choice of Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle. Probably one of them goes ahead. But they'll have one of those 3 to pick. Is it the smart thing to do? Absolutely not. That defense needs so much help.
Like in every aspect. Like there isn't one, even though they took the top cornerback in the draft last year, the secondary still needs work. Like this defense stinks.
I think they should take a real hard look at Micah Parsons out of Penn State, the linebacker. I really like him in this draft. I know I've saw some reports that there's character concerns, but if that gets evened out, then Micah Parsons, I think, is going to be an absolute great NFL defensive player.
Yeah, Micah Parsons, I've been on that train since last year when I saw him in Penn State's bowl game. He's just absolute, Isaiah Simmons almost type player on the field, Swiss Army knife on defense. And that's definitely something that the Lions need is somebody who can play multiple positions, cover a lot of field, and Parsons is able to do that. I'm actually looking at the Lions depth chart again, and I saw that Everson Griffin is currently a member of the defense. What a fall from grace for him. But Micah Parsons is somebody if I were the Lions, I'd definitely be targeting in April.
Yeah, so I was going to mention for the Lions at that pick, they don't really need defensive line too bad. They have Trey Flowers. That's not awful. They really need help from linebacker beyond. I don't think they would draft one of the 2 top corners in Patrick Surtain or Caleb Farley. I don't think they would draft corner top 10 back-to-back years. When was the last time you saw safety get drafted in the top 10? Like a decent amount of.
Usually you have to wait until at least the teens for the top safety to go.
Yeah, and that's maybe teens. So I think the play for them will be linebacker. They could go defensive line, but I don't like any of the defensive line prospects enough to go top 10. Mm-hmm. This is actually a real offensive-heavy top 10. The top 10 in this draft will be, out of the 10 picks, I will be willing to put stake 8 of them at least will be offensive.
And if you had two like dynamite like locks for the defense, who would they be in the top 10 of the draft?
Parsons and maybe Kwity Paye. Because
Surtain, you don't think would go top 10?
Oh, that was on me. I think Surtain would go top 10.
Yeah.
That's
as well.
Kwity Paye is right on the edge, defensive edge rusher for Michigan, super athletic. You might see Caleb Farley get close into that range. It's all about what the teams want to do, because the Eagles need a defensive player bad, but they could go wide receiver at 6.
Definitely.
The Cowboys need a defensive player bad. They're almost a shoo-in for either Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain.
Oh yeah, if they're not drafting secondary, then Jerry Jones needs to find some new beds.
Yeah, so you're gonna see like maybe 2, at the most 3, but I would be very shocked if it was 3, because you got 2 really good offensive linemen in Penny Sewell and Rashawn Slater. And then you got the 3 wide receivers that could all go top 10, no surprise. And then you got 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks with Trey Lance going top 10 as well. So it's interesting. But before we had the break, and I want to move back to the Rams and just make a point about what they traded to get Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the Bears should have done.
Oh, absolutely.
The Bears, I mean, it's hard for them to do that after the season Trubisky had in 2018. People forget he had a great year. They went, I think it was 12-4. Then the Cody Parkey missed, the double doink, or 2017 it was. I know Trubisky looked good at the time, but if you could have packaged with that defense a couple firsts to get an elite quarterback to put you over the edge, they should have done it. And I give credit to the Rams. They put money where their mouth was, and they made things happen.
Well, right before we go to break here, I just want to mention that the Lions did call pretty much every team. I heard they were calling teams that were so locked in at quarterback that they didn't even want to pick up the phone, but the Lions still made the call. So I'm sure the Bears in that mix. I just think personally, this was the best deal on the board for the Lions. They got a quarterback, and he's not the worst quarterback in the world. So, but his contract kind of makes him invaluable. Therefore, they get the draft capital. On top of that, you get a full return, and for a player that didn't want to be in Detroit anymore, you get a pretty good number of assets.
One quick thing before we go to break. I know we do this like every time, but there's one quick thought that came to mind. There was a report that after the trade was done that Matthew Stafford said he was fine going everywhere besides there's one team. Did you see the report?
Oh, yeah, I did actually. There's one person that's pretty responsible for that.
The team that he said there's no way I'm going to is the New England Patriots. And he cited because they hired his old head coach in Detroit, Matt Patricia. I don't even know what his role is. It's like an assistant to something coach.
Yeah, it's like the assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Was he that bad to where he will not have any hand in game planning, how the roster is constructed? He won't have a hand in any of it that really a quarterback would not want to be associated with him again.
Yeah, I just think he lost the locker room so fast in Detroit, and they kept him way over past his welcome, and that just got it got to be too much for Stafford, and that's why he just did not want to deal with anything involving Matt Patricia anymore.
And as you guys know, I'm a Patriots fan, and the Patriots need wide receivers, and obviously Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones are 2 good wide receivers on the free agent market. Unless they feel opposite of Stafford, which we'll find hard to believe, you could basically cross those off the list. They're not coming to New England either.
Absolutely. And Nick's been trying to find a receiver for this New England Patriots team for a while now.
Well, now after this report, I'm moving on. Those 2 are gone.
It's the list dwindles.
The list is now basically Chris Godwin and Allen Robinson, because I don't want Juju.
Yeah, well, they take what you can get,
I mean, I think the lowest I'll go is Curtis Samuel. I'll be fine. I like Curtis. He's a under the radar free agent.
Definitely utility, man.
Yeah. So watch out for him, by the way, this offseason. I know we'll get into more offseason like in 2 or 3 weeks when it's actually the offseason. But Curtis Samuel is an early look ahead for me. We're gonna have to break. When we come back, we talked. I mean, Super Bowl we gotta talk something. I've heard a lot of nonsense about Mahomes already having a case for the greatest quarterback of all time. We'll get into that when we come back. Stay tuned. 6:45. Mike Vaccaro coming on. Listen to Director's Cut on 88.3 The Buzz. it does not. Welcome back into 88.3 The Buzz, live from St. Bonaventure University. Just listening to the Director's Cut with Nick Rohloff and Tyler Smith. The first 20 minutes, we broke down the Stafford and the Rams trade, and now it's Super Bowl week. We got to move into this. We're not going to go fully in depth because it's a long week. We got to pace ourselves.
Yeah, we have a full week of remote Radio Row broadcasts coming at you guys every day this week. We're going to be on Twitter. We're going to be on Facebook Live. We're trying to get on YouTube Live as well. So this is a really new thing going on here at The Buzz, and we're very excited to be able to be, kind of the lab rats for this whole situation.
Yeah, and when we move into the Super Bowl segment now, there's a lot of storylines coming with the Super Bowl. Obviously, Brady versus Mahomes is the lead dog. But before we get into that one, I want to quickly talk about this also being the first time in NFL history where the home stadium is the stadium where the game's being played is the home stadium of a team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a storyline that's like going under the rug a little bit because of all the other ones.
And it's funny because who's the quarterback of the team who's hosting the Super Bowl? It's Tom Brady. He has the most Super Bowl victories in NFL history. He's the greatest winner in the sport. It's just a little funny that he's had all this success in his career, and now he just goes to a new place. Whose city is hosting the Super Bowl next year? And coincidentally, the roster's phenomenal, and they make it all the way.
Yeah, and people thought it was going to be possible, I think, a couple years back when the Cowboys hosted it, and they were pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was actually Dak and Zeke's rookie year.
Yeah, they were 13-3 that year.
Yeah, and some people thought they were going to be able to first team do it. And it's a little unfortunate. We were speaking before the show that I really wish this year would have been a normal year. I mean, everyone obviously wants it to be a normal year, but I would have loved to see the percentages of Bucs fans compared to other fans, because it's not like a normal game where at a home game and during the regular season you're going to see a majority, like 90%, be the home team. Like, it's still a Super Bowl. There's going to be fans from all teams, just NFL fans. I would have liked to see in a full stadium where the percentages were the home team. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see it. But this does beg the question, even though it's not a regular season with a packed house to the Super Bowl, is there a distinct advantage for Tampa being at home?
I've been thinking about this for a while now. There isn't really many metrics to go off of, especially now with the way that fans are being admitted to this game. It's obviously not the full crowd. And we really don't have – this is obviously the first time this is happening, so we don't have anything to go off of. But I feel like it obviously has to give some sort of advantage. It's been the stadium that the Bucs and Tom Brady have played in all year. They're very good at home. And although that there's no real factor to that this season, it's still obviously a metric that Tampa Bay has been pretty solid at home this season. And, going into this game, obviously Tom Brady is going to be comfortable, the visuals that he's seen all season. Obviously, he was in New England for 20 years, and he was very used to that. So this is obviously an adjustment for him. But now we're, 18 games into the season, 19 games into the season, and now he's back home for another time in this playoffs. Actually, he's home for the first time this entire playoffs because he didn't win the division. That's funny how that seems to work out. But yeah, I just think there has to be a little bit of an advantage for Tampa Bay at home. But obviously, you're playing Patrick Mahomes on the other side, and that kind of negates anything.
That is true, and you saw that the Chiefs went into Tampa earlier on this season, and only, which is weird, I was looking back at the game, it was only 27-24 Chiefs, with the records Tyreek Hill set with 200 yards in one quarter receiving.
I forgot that was that game, to be honest.
You would have thought it would have been more than 3 points. But I don't think it's going to be that big of an advantage because, like I said, there's not full capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they get to sleep in their own bed and just go to their home stadium like any other game. But the Chiefs do too. I mean, they're going to have one night, 2 nights maybe. I don't know if they're coming in on Friday or Saturday for the Super Bowl, so it'd only be 1 or 2 days max where they're not staying in their own homes.
They're not going down to the Tampa Bay for the whole week?
No.
Oh, wow.
They're flying in Friday or Saturday. And that was going to be something I brought up is in a normal year, outside of just the fans in the stadium, this would be a huge advantage.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when the whole thing is you fly down to the Super Bowl, the two teams, you get there probably Saturday or Sunday, and then you have this whole week of practicing media, and you're staying in a different place than where you do in a normal game. It's not supposed to be normal. It's supposed to be the Super Bowl. But now there's no media. They're obviously talking to media, but they're not having that away from home feeling. They're practicing all week at their normal places, and they're really just it's a normal game like the regular season. So I don't really think it's going to be too big of an advantage for the Tampa Bay Bucks. So,
something that could be an advantage for these Bucks going into this game is the fact that Tom Brady, yes, he has 7 Super Bowls, but he's been in the league 20 years. He's seen so many defenses and so many schemes from these coaches. Obviously, it's just one game, anything can happen, but obviously Brady's experience has to factor in it a little bit here, even though Mahomes is a decorated veteran himself now.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking that too, is will Tom Brady's experience matter too much in the Super Bowl? It will help the rest of the Bucks. Let's think about this. The Bucks team, I mean, they're so inexperienced. You had Leonard Fournette and Rob Gronkowski are maybe some of the only players that have had playoff experience. Just think about that.
You're right.
Like Fournette, it was in the 2017 run where they made it to the AFC Championship game and lost.
Playoff Lenny.
Playoff Lenny, yes, as we know. Shout out Barstool Big Cat for that. But anyway, going back, and Rob Gronkowski obviously all those years in New England, but this team is so young. Devin White, this was his first playoffs. Levante David, he's a really good experienced linebacker, but he's never been to this point. Mm-hmm. The secondary is so young. You think about their arguably best defensive player in the secondary is a rookie, Antoine Winfield, who didn't even play in the NFC Championship game.
Their second best defensive back might be a rookie, Carlton Davis.
Yeah. We talked about that last week, how much we love the Bucs secondary.
This is a Carlton Davis show, okay? All right, let's plain and simple.
And the only bad thing is that he's facing someone who put up 200 and a quarter on him last time.
Yeah, well, those Twitter fingers will be put to the test this weekend. Well, that's for sure.
But yeah, Brady might help get some of these young players in line, but the more experienced team, one's got in my opinion, the greatest quarterback of all time, the most experienced quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. But the more experienced team is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they were at the Super Bowl last year in a normal Super Bowl, and they have almost the same returning cast.
They have their same returning cast, and I'd argue they got a little better. They just another year of mesh, another year of Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, Patrick Mahomes almost coasted through this regular season and won himself an MVP. The Chiefs didn't cover. The Chiefs haven't covered a single spread for the past. Oh no! Actually, aside from this last Buffalo game, they haven't covered a spread in 11 weeks. So the Chiefs have been playing close games, kind of making moseying their way through the regular season, and now it's the playoffs, and they turned the gears on and. They showed that they're an obvious tier above Buffalo last week, and they're same team that we saw walk in to Miami last year and come back in the fourth quarter and just turn it up, flip the switch when the time was right.
Yeah, and I mentioned the experience of Tom Brady doesn't matter.
No,
and I think this is going to be a great game. We're not going to go in-depth breakdown right now. We're just discussing some other thing. We're not going to tell you who we think is going to win for now. But I do want to talk about some potential outcomes. I teased it before we went to break about some people in the national media, ESPN, Fox Sports, saying that if Mahomes wins this game, he would already be in the GOAT status of quarterbacks.
Now, obviously, I'm probably the biggest Patrick Mahomes not supporter because I'm not a Chiefs fan, but of his career, I just believe he's going to be he's on a trajectory like we haven't seen before. Obviously, 2 Super Bowls in your first 4 years never been done. Nick mentioned this to me before. Tom Brady did 3 in his first 5 years, which obviously hasn't been done either, aside from himself. So Patrick Mahomes is on the track to be the GOAT. Especially because if you just look at him and Brady as athletes, Mahomes is obviously the more skilled football player, but Brady, his mind and his the work ethic and the way he handles himself kind of elevates him above guys like Aaron Rodgers, Joe Montana, to be that greatest quarterback of all time.
And you really got me fired up about this topic is that before I came over to the station and I was on at my apartment and I had Speak for Yourself on Fox with Marcellus Wiley and Emmanuel Acho.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about it. Marcellus Wiley was against this idea of Mahomes winning and being this, like one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And Acho was for it. And the word trajectory you use is right. Like if he wins the Super Bowl, he will be on the trajectory to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that he would be already a top 3 quarterback of all time is absurd and I think almost disrespectful to quarterbacks like I wouldn't even put Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers in there because they only won one. But yeah. I would say like Joe Montana, Steve Young, like
John Elway.
You're putting he's on that trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But already there's no way. There is no way. I did see that if he won the Super Bowl, he would be the first player ever to win an MVP and 2 Super Bowls in their first 4 seasons. That's no doubt about it impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But to be top 3 all time already, according to some people, it's laughable in my opinion.
And we are not saying that Mahomes is not going to be not at all saying that Mahomes isn't going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. Nick, I know you're a Patriots fan and an avid Tom Brady supporter. But you even have an inclination that Mahomes is one of the most interesting and exciting talents the game's ever seen. So the way he can bail himself out of plays is something that we've only seen with a handful of quarterbacks at certain times before. He can do it at a moment's notice. So not doubting that Mahomes is going to be there one day, but after 2 Super Bowls, obviously that's 2 more than 99% of NFL players ever to play in the league. But it's just when you're talking about GOAT status, obviously Brady, like you just got to look at winning. Brady's won 6. Like I would need Mahomes to at least win 3 or 4, probably 4 before I really start vaulting him into the number 1 quarterback of all time.
It's going to be the exact same debate in 15, 20 years as MJ LeBron. It will be the same exact debate, which is funny, though, because you're going to have the quote-unquote old heads probably think Brady,
mm-hmm.
and then the new people probably think Mahomes. But if you really compare the two, it would almost be that Brady is like the LeBron and Mahomes is like the Jordan. If you just look at the talent base.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Because LeBron does it all. What does Brady do? He's got the leadership. He has the mind aspect. He's playing late into his career, just like LeBron is, while Jordan's got the athleticism, the just raw ability to score the ball, and that's almost like what Mahomes does,
mm-hmm.
if you're making a comparison. But it's going to be that kind of debate. But on the flip side of it, we're talking about if Mahomes wins. But if Brady wins, if he gets his 7th and his first and without the Patriots in his first year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is there anything Mahomes could do to catch him at 7?
He'd have to win 5 or 6. He'd have to win 5 or 6.
I almost think that if Brady were to win this Super Bowl and they don't match up in the Super Bowl again until Brady retires,
mm-hmm.
I don't think there could be anything Mahomes does besides win more rings to overpass Brady. Because even if he won somehow 7 rings, if Brady wins this and Mahomes wins 6 more to get to 7, Brady's always going to have that head-to-head advantage, especially with Mahomes being at his prime and Brady being 43 at the time.
You're absolutely right. And then, listen, Brady is 43. Let's not knock the season he's had. Although in the Packer game, he really didn't light up the stat sheet. He did throw 3 interceptions, and obviously that cannot happen if he even has a chance to win this game. But yeah, that analogy you had was pretty spot on, and I'm just excited to see this game. This is the greatest quarterback matchup in Super Bowl history, and I don't even think it's close.
Oh, I agree with you. Like, if you look back at Super Bowls, what can you say? Like, we never got a Brady Rodgers, never got a Brady Brees.
Could have had both. Or no, couldn't have Brady Breeze, but could have had. Or never mind. A couple years past when Brady was in the AFC, you could have had those matchups, but not this year.
You could have. We never. Manning and Brady always played each other in the AFC, so you couldn't have got a Super Bowl matchup.
Yep.
There's good quarterback duels in like a long time ago, like Aikman, Jim Kelly, but I don't really think that stacks up to this.
Not even close. I mean, I'd say the closest one in the past, probably at least decade, 15 years, Russell Wilson, Peyton Manning. I mean, and that was a blowout, and Russell Wilson wasn't even a star yet. So, I mean, there aren't really a lot of the times there's, very contrasting rosters that match up with the Super Bowl. Usually maybe it's one heavily defensive team, and then the others are, rocket offense.
Like last year. Like you had the 49ers with an average Jimmy G faces Mahomes.
Run game, yeah. Exactly.
And then the year before that, it was Brady versus Goff. Like you don't see these quarterback matchups that often. So if I were to say advice, this is gonna be the launching point for debates to come in the next 15 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Like kids that are 5 years old will be debating these two quarterbacks in 15 years. So I would just say enjoy it because I don't know the next time we will see a quarterback matchup like this in the Super Bowl. You might not see a better one ever. And obviously that's a bold statement, but it's true though. Because like you never know who could come along, but when you have the established GOAT and the proclaimed GOAT already in year 4, it's
the prodigal son.
That's a good way to put it. Prodigal son. It's going to be very interesting, and I am so ecstatic for the game. But before that, we have a lot of stuff to get through this week, and we're going to head to break. And when we come back for break, we should have Mike Vaccaro, the New York Post, and he's a St. Bonaventure alum. We're going to get into some Bonnies basketball. Should they be ranked? I don't know. Stay tuned for that. You listen to Draft Scout with Nick Rohloff and Tyler Smith on 88.3 The Buzz.
listen to retired safety. He was saying that and listening to the Cubs.
All right, joining us on the show now, live on the Director's Cut, New York Post lead sports columnist, and more importantly, St. Bonaventure University graduate Mike Vaccaro. Mike, thanks for taking the time on especially such a busy night that we'll be getting to in a little bit.
Guys, good to be here with you. How you guys doing this week? Sorry that we're not doing this in Tampa.
I wish.
I guess it's the next best thing.
Yeah, it would have been even better. Thanks for joining us once again. It's an honor, actually.
Well, it's really good to join you. I appreciate having me on.
Yeah, so like I said, it's a busy night for you. We'll get to that in just a little bit. We want to touch on the more pressing issue right now, and that is this year's St. Bonaventure Bonnies men's basketball team. They're making some serious noise right now. What are your thoughts on this Bonnies team right now compared to the better teams you've seen in the past? You graduated in '88. You know a lot about the history of Bonnie basketball. How does this one stack up?
Boy, it stacks right up there, guys. I mean, especially 1 to 5, the 5 guys starting lineup are probably as good a 1 to 5 as I've ever experienced. So I go back to 1985 with this team. Really, the year before, the first Bonnie game I ever watched was a St. Bonaventure St. John's game when I was a senior in high school in December of 1984. So I mean, it's look, I mean, obviously the teams that went to the NCAA tournament were terrific teams. The teams that both went to the tournament in 2018 and should have gone in 2016, those were excellent teams. But I'll tell you what, I don't think there's a weak link in the starting lineup. The starting 5 is really as good as you'll probably find anywhere, certainly in the league. I don't want to say necessarily, that they would stack up with Gonzaga's 1 to 5, but they're awfully good. And I think the one problem that they might run into is if somebody gets hurt and gets sick, if there's foul trouble, they're not very obviously they're pretty thin after that. With results of transfers, with results of Coach Schmidt, relying on a pretty tight rotation to begin with. So it's but talent wise, I'll tell you what, I put this team up against any team that I've seen, and I think probably if you want to go back to maybe the '77 NIT team in terms of the starting lineup. That's how good I think it is. Now, obviously, I mean, anything can happen from here on, and that's not to say that they're a tournament team because they still got some games to win. But they're just very impressive. What impresses me about them is that even when they don't play at their best, they're still able to win most of these nights. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Duquesne game is a game that kind of sticks out in my mind because they really didn't play well at all, and there really wasn't one guy you could say Attaway played well late. There was people here and there, and yet they still won the game against a team that's a reasonably competitive team. So, and of course they looked, I thought, terrific against George Mason last Saturday.
Yeah, it was really nice being there live for that George Mason game. Now, you talked about depth. It could be a concern for this team going forward if an outside event were to occur. I touched on that in my article on WSBU.com just a few days ago after the Mason game. I said, this is what happened with the 2018 team that went to the tournament. They only played 6 or 7 guys. They were really burnt out after a conference tournament and tough 2 games with travel. Once they got to Florida, they were all gassed out.
Yeah, and that team really, I think, had been through the emotional ender too, because in a lot of ways those guys carried the burden of 2016. I know all those guys weren't on that team necessarily, but Ladari was, and obviously Zay Adams was, and I think there was an emotional price to be paid also for just kind of having to feel that every game they played in February and March they felt like they had to win, and of course they did. I mean, they went on that incredible winning streak, and there's probably never been as much pressure on a team as the game they played against Richmond in the quarterfinals that year, because that was where they had lost 2 years earlier in the quarters, and probably if they had lost that game, they wouldn't have gotten in 18 either. So I mean, there's a lot of there's really an emotional toll to be paid for that, and then of course, they have to play UCLA and then they play Florida 2 nights later. So yeah, physically it became a problem also. But look, they wouldn't be the first team in history to to be able to succeed with a 7 or 8 man rotation. It's not really how teams do it now, but you could do it. I mean, and the fact is, if you can stay out of foul trouble and keep your guys together, they're a very athletic team. And look, I mean, the thing that really impresses me most, and the thing that really I think gives you a lot of encouragement is that it's such a good defensive team, and defense travels, and you can take defense everywhere. And look, even the game they lost to Rhode Island, it was kind of an ugly defensive struggle. And I think that's one of the things that really kind of gives you encouragement. Again, if you can stay reasonably healthy and stay out of foul trouble, I mean, that team plays just terrific defense, better defense than any team I've seen at Bonaventure ever. I mean, it's that good, and that's the thing you really kind of rely on. And that's the reason why they're able to carry themselves in games where their offense hasn't necessarily clicked. And in a COVID season, you're not always going to look very sharp.
Absolutely, and we're actually obviously have the big game against St. Louis coming this Saturday, and we're actually still waiting on you. We've had all these kind of Bonnie people getting on the movement of #rank the Bonnies. What's up with that?
Well, I actually retweeted Rick Bozich, who's a longtime friend of mine from Louisville, who actually I know he voted for the Bonnies. I think he had them at number 22 this week. So I was more than happy to retweet him this morning when he said that he was leaning toward the Bonnies, and I think I probably guilted him into it after he put it out there. But it's great. I guess they're up to around 32 now in the AP poll. And look, I think if they can, I think they're going to be St. Wednesday just because St. Joe's is having their struggles this year. But
yeah, I didn't even mention that.
And it comes down to St. Louis on Saturday. And look, I mean, there's 4 or 5 games that they're going to have this year. They've already played 2. They've already won both of them against VCU and Richmond. I mean, in theory, they got 2 more games against St. Louis. They got another game against Richmond, hopefully, and they've got a Davidson game, hopefully, and a Dayton game. I mean, you win 3 of those games. I mean, I think that you're looking at not only getting in the tournament, but getting yourself a pretty, avoiding the first 4, which is a nice thing, but also giving yourself a competitive seed. But obviously, you got to do it. And look, the St. Louis team is the team that rightfully so had all the attention attached to it before the season, and really was playing well in December until they just kind of ran into the COVID brick wall. And if you can come away with a win there, I think next Monday, a really good chance of being ranked. I think a lot of people who have votes and want to give the Atlantic vote, kind of split their vote now between several teams. But if Bonner beats St. Louis, I think that Bonner will probably get most of those votes, and they'll probably sneak in.
Yeah, when you look at this Bonnie's team, you got a 1-2 punch leading the scoring with Kyle Lofton and Jaron English. In my opinion, I think in order to beat these tougher opponents like St. Louis and hopefully into the tournament, you're going to need that bona fide third scorer. Who do you see breaking out to be that third guy? Do you think it's going to be Dom, Jalen Attaway, or Shun? What do you think on that?
Well, I mean, one of the great things about it, and one of the things about this 5 is that really any one of them can step forward and contribute. You're right that saying Holmes and Lofton are kind of the 2 reliable guys, but look, I mean, no one's played better than Dominic Wilson in this couple of games, and when he's shooting that way, it's scary. What's great about Dom is that he was 7 for 7 at one point the other day, and he went then the next 5 minutes without taking a shot. And sometimes you say that's not great because you want a guy to be able to kind of take advantage of a day like that. But to me, what it tells you is that he's not a guy who looks to take advantage of that way by launching in-check shots. I mean, he stays within the offense and figures he'll get his within the flow of the offense, which is a great sign. And look, I mean, O'Shea really played probably his best offensive game since the first couple of games of the season the other day, and that's really what you're looking for. I mean, if you can get inside-outside threat on offense, that's going to just multiply, how dangerous the Bonnies are. And, I think there's been some frustrations expressed with O'Shea's offensive development this year, which I think, you can trace to not having any kind of, substantial off-season training, to not having a huge preseason, and to the choppy nature of the season. I think it's hard, but what he displayed on Saturday. Look, I mean, George Mason is decided not to double him, and he was able to kind of have his way underneath. And he's a smart enough and good enough passer that, when teams decide to double him, well, that's going to leave open shots for everybody else, and that's not really a great thing for the opposing team either. So, I mean, it's a lot of ways I think shoot is the key to the Bonnies being able to really kind of take this to a different level in terms of what they can do and the turn they get in. Because once you have an inside-outside threat established, and all of a sudden you can really play with just about anybody.
Absolutely. We're going to have to definitely watch out for, Oshun foul trouble when that comes around, because you know what? He's on the floor. This is a totally different team. He was a plus 26 against George Mason, and Jalen Shaw didn't actually play bad, but unfortunately was a -8 in his couple minutes there. However, this is a year the Bonnies are great. Not great. Let's not go that far yet. But they're turning up a new leaf, and really gaining some national attention. Also gaining some attention and some more popularity over these past few months is New York sports, and it's really what your focus is at the New York Post. What can you say about teams like obviously the Rangers getting very good now, or at least young? The Yankees are obviously good. The Mets are getting better. The Jets are instilling a culture change, and the Giants. I mean, they had I would say even though their record wasn't great, it was a promising season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been kind of a difficult stretch of deserts in the last couple of years to be writing about New York sports, because the teams, generally speaking, have been very disappointing. The Mets went to the World Series in 15, and the Yankees generally go to the playoffs every year, although they haven't been back to the World Series in now 12 years. But everybody else has been a mess. I mean, the Knicks have been a mess for 20 years. The Nets have been a mess. I mean, you go on and on. And it really kind of, last summer, as we kind of started to emerge a little bit from the lockdown, I mean, the Islanders kind of gave everybody around here a little bit of hope, because they made it to the conference finals really kind of, unexpectedly. And that really kind of set a little bit of a tone, kind of a reminder of just how much fun playoffs can be around here, regardless of the sport. The Giants weren't very good, but they did stay in the NFL race until week 17. And so there's something to be said for that, and for them playing in important games, even if they, didn't wind up getting in the playoffs themselves. And look, I mean, the Jets were kind of cartoonish most of the year, but you like to think they have a guy now in Robert Saleh who looks like he's going to know what he's doing. He's going to have a philosophy to try and address things, and they have so many picks and so much cap space. That's kind of where the Knicks are now also. The Knicks and the Jets kind of lead the universe in cap space and picks. And that doesn't necessarily automatically translate to anything, but they're in a position now where where they can possibly make a move. I mean, the Knicks are a little more entertaining every night than they've been in the past. And look, I mean, across town, I mean, the Nets are still kind of establishing themselves as a New York team, quite frankly. But look, I mean, you have a lot of fun watching them play. You're not going to see anybody guard anybody in their games. That game last night against the Wizards was just one for the ages in terms of nobody guarding anybody on either side. But that's kind of what the Nets are. I don't know that they're necessarily going to be able to win a championship that way, but they're certainly going to they're going to play a lot of entertaining games. And at some point, given the fact that we've had so much of a slog in the city for so long with all of our teams, it's kind of a nice change of pace.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Yankees are usually having success, and the Knicks might not always have success, but they're very entertaining. With the Nets now getting the big three of Kevin Durant, Harden, Kyrie, and then the Mets and the baseball back to good new owner Steve Cohen, trading for Francisco Lindor. Is there a different feeling now covering New York sports with how good those second-hand New York teams are becoming?
Yeah, it really is. You can have some fun and some laughs at the expense of some bad teams, but that grows old after a while. And the fact is that, look, people think that, all of us in the media, that nothing makes us happier than we're able to write negative stories, but we all know that, there's never, business is never better than when teams are good. Whether that's the Bonnies for you guys, whether that's the Yankees and the Giants for me. If the Mets were in the World Series like they were in 2015, you couldn't find the New York Post at a newsstand anywhere in New York. I mean, sometimes our server was clogged because of all the people wanting to see our stories, and that's what the goal is. You want people to to read your stories, and people are more inclined to read your stories if you're writing about winning teams. This is the way it is. And so that's good for us. It's good for business, and it's good certainly for what I do day to day because, yes, you do like to make fun of the Knicks because they're so bad every now and again. You go for a couple of cheap laughs, but, it's hard to sustain that over the course of a long season. And certainly it's hard to sustain that. Looking at it's been a pretty long slog since the Giants won the Super Bowl, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, I guess. But it was, but it's it is looking better, and it's looking better across the board. As far as I'm concerned, for what I do for a living, it's a lot better now.
Got an emerging star, Emmanuel, quickly this year in the late 20s. Can you speak to how the fans? Because I see it all the time on social media, how much they love that guy. Can you speak to what you've seen from it?
I mean, I would just right now it's all speculation as to what the guard would sound like when he used the game. But I would have to imagine it would be very close to what it was like, 10 years ago when Jeremy Lin was doing his thing. We're just the warm-ups, it was electric, and especially quickly coming off the bench, you can only imagine what it would be like for 19,000 New Yorkers with a couple of beers in them to be getting excited about seeing quickly, kind of pull off his warm-ups, get to the scorer's table and get in. And look, he's not always great, but he's always fun. He doesn't always. I mean, he's not what Lynn was in terms of that 2 week stretch where he had Linsanity, where he was just making every shot, making every play, and quickly makes a lot of them. But the thing of it is, even when he's not playing great, he's doing something positive. And you team him up with the fact that you got a guy in R.J. Barrett who was a number 3 pick in last year's draft. Some people were a little bit disappointed and kind of looked at him as a consolation prize because he wasn't Zion Williamson or John Morant. But this year, he's as improved a player as you're going to see in the league. So you put those 2 guys together. They don't always play on the floor together, but you put those 2 guys, in a game together, and you really do. You're starting to see something with the Knicks, and you have other pieces that make them interesting to watch. And they're not going to win more than 35 or 36 games. They may not get that many wins this year, and they're probably not going to get the playoffs. But they are interesting to watch, and people want to look. They're playing the Bulls late. And people, Knicks fans that I know, want to watch that game. And they can't wait to watch the game. And I can't tell you the last time the Knicks fans were that excited to watch, a midweek game. And we're going to build their night around watching the Knicks as opposed to Office reruns or Law and Order reruns. And it's a nice change of pace.
And that's been kind of the general consensus. Obviously, I'm from the Hudson Valley area, actually Goshen. I know you have a history. You wrote for the Times-Star Record for a bit.
Sure did, yeah.
That's a lot of my friends down there, obviously, Knick fans, and this has been the first time in a long time that they've been excited to watch the games. And you mentioned Emmanuel quickly. What do you think about him? His role right now, obviously, that running floater is pretty deadly. Do you like where his role is right now, or do you think Tom Thibodeau should really just take Elfrid Payton out of the starting lineup and put quickly in that spot? Because I've always never been an Elfrid Payton guy.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be interesting when Frank Ntilikina comes back. And if he comes back, not that Ntilikina is going to make anybody forget Bob Cousy, but I do think that if there's another option besides Elfrid Payton that you might see Thibodeau go to that. The thing is, I think what he likes, I think he likes the place where quickly is right now. I think he likes being able to let him watch the way a game progresses for the first 7 or 8 minutes before putting him in. I think he likes the idea that you're not putting a whole lot of pressure on him or asking him to play, a lot of minutes just now and just allowing him to be an energy player. Kind of a name from the past before your guys' time, but Vinnie Johnson just come into the big Pistons teams in the late 80s and early 90s, just kind of, be able to kind of ignite the offense. think maybe Nilakina go in the starting lineup, quickly back him up, and then we'll probably start seeing left and left.
Yeah, and just believe hype.
I'd be surprised if he won the award, but I certainly think he's got a great case he made to be people were associated with the Knicks that it didn't break well for him last year. That he deserved to at least be on one of the teams. He wasn't going to be there's going to be something of a disappointment, but I think it also fuels him to want to be better this year. And take a look at RJ's last 10 games, you can just see just how he's really starting to run into form, and it just seems like he's figuring it out. So, but to answer your question, I don't think Brooklyn's going to win the MVP. They're going to win the Rookie of the Year, but I do think that he'll definitely have a shot to make that all-rookie team. That's not a bad place to start out a career.
And, people were actually labeling this pick as an F at draft time. And obviously, Quickly's proved those guys wrong. RJ Barrett's taken a step this year. It's the first time the Knicks have been exciting in a long time. And New York's they deserve it after a while. I want to switch gears to what we're going to touch on last. And, what we've been touching on last with every interviewee we've had so far is the big game in Tampa, where we were supposed to be this week. It's the greatest QB matchup, like Nick and I said earlier in the show, the greatest QB matchup in Super. And what's going to transpire for both of these teams to win?
It is going to be a great matchup, but there's going to be so much to talk about between now and Sunday, which is kind of what you want from the Super Bowl. I mean, a lot of times to get these games, you find yourself trying to generate interesting stories. On Monday, intriguing matchups and so forth. I mean, Zella came up Brady. He won 6 of them already. He's to me, there's no question the best player in this game is Patrick Mahomes. He's the best player in football. He's probably not going to win the MVP this year. If Mahomes plays, a reasonably Patrick Mahomes-like game, the Chiefs are going to win. They just are. They'll outscore the Bucs. They'll figure out a way. He'll make a play when he needs to because he's got, he's not only on the offensive line. I realize they've had a couple of COVID issues already this week, and so maybe they'll be thinner than they might otherwise be. But the fact of the matter is, until you show me that the Buccaneers defense, which is capable because they're obviously one of the best defenses in the league, but until you show me that they're capable of neutralizing Mahomes, I'm just not going to believe that they're going to figure out a way to beat Mahomes. And you saw what he did, in spasms against them. In the first time they met him, I think he'll have 206 yards in the first quarter. You just don't do that in the NFL against anybody, specifically against a team like the Buccaneers. But to me, last year in the Super Bowl for three plus quarters, Mahomes was very average. So if that's the kind of game he's going to play on Sunday, the Buccaneers can obviously stay close and they have Tom Brady on their side. And so that's kind of, I think, what the Bucs have to hope for. But again, I think if Mahomes comes out and he's playing it more close to the way we're used to seeing him, it's going to be hard to beat them. And it's going to be that way for any opponent for the Chiefs for the foreseeable future until they start pricing these guys out, start losing players because of how much they have to pay to retain Mahomes. But right now, that's not an issue. Right now, I think Mahomes is that good that he's going to dictate what happens with the rest of the game.
Yeah, so it looks like you got the Chiefs winning. This has been a great interview. And before we wrap up, we got one more question for you. We've done this with all of our guests so far that we've interviewed. We got to get your prediction on the Gatorade color. Do we think it's going to be orange, red, yellow or green, lime, clear, water, blue, purple? What do you think?
I'm going to go with yellow, but I'm an old school guy, so Gatorade to me is always the yellow. It's always the traditional old school lemon lime. So I'm going to go with that because I think that's always the old standby when it comes to Gatorade. Now, I may try that may be old fogey, but that's to me. When I think of Gatorade, that's what I think of.
Well, there you have it. We've only had one finished up so far, so it's actually 1-1 clear to yellow to kick off our remote radio row. Mike, we couldn't thank you enough for getting on the show. For those listening, Knicks Bulls tonight. Mike's covering it, and he'll have a story out, I'm sure, at some point. You don't want to miss that. He's one of the most decorated and talented writers in the business. So, Mike, again, we can't thank you enough, and we hope to have you on the show again soon.
Anytime, guys. Great talking to you. And hopefully maybe we can talk, have this little thing maybe from the radio forward, or radio row with the NCAA tournament. That'd be nice, right?
Absolutely. That's the plan right now. Go Bonnies.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
Yep. See ya.
Welcome back into 88.3 The Buzz, live from St. Bonaventure University. We just had that awesome interview with Mike Vaccaro. So much that we talked about basketball, Bonnies. Just want to give a quick thank you to him again. and we talked about the Bonnies, and we have a hashtag going. You mentioned it, hashtag rank the Bonnies. What's going on here? They're not ranked. They're ranked 32nd, though. I'll take it.
Hey, listen, I've never seen a St. Bonaventure team. Obviously, I've only been here 2 years, and our team last year was actually not half bad. But this time around, we got a veteran group of guys. They're hungry, and they just want to keep getting better every day. I've really enjoyed the chemistry I've seen from this team, and I think that's the real reason that we are number 32, quote unquote number 32 in the nation right now according to votes. Because you know what, we don't have the most talented starting five in the nation. You know what, they mesh really, really well, and that's as much as you could ask for from a Mark Schmidt basketball team. Like, he puts together the schemes, and these players just mesh over time. It's now Dom, Kyle, and Oshun's third year, and for most college programs, that's when you really start to see the true progression. Maybe they get into the NCAA tournament but lose the first game. They'll be 1 year away, and then the next year the seniors will really make a run. But this year, I feel like this team has a pretty high ceiling as far as the NCAA tournament goes. Maybe potential round of 32 appearance, because last year, obviously, or last time around, we only made it past the first four. I don't think that the Bonnies will be in that same position this season. I think that this team is actually a little more impressive as far as straight up talent. Straight up talent goes on the basketball floor. This team is built for success, and they're going to be right back at it next year as well.
Yeah, and they dominated George Mason this past Saturday, 84-67. We saw great offensive games from Dom Welsh, Oshunashuni, and it was really encouraging to see, because we talked about it last week, and we even talked about it with Mike, that we're going to need a third scorer to come out if we want to win. And we got more than a third. We got the two guys that we were saying possibility of us being ranked, which I wouldn't even. It could happen if I think they would 1,000% be ranked next week. But as we're talking right now, do you think they should be ranked? Because I still, even though I want them to, I don't think they should be. Even though I want them to, I don't think they should be.
Well, the fact that
they're 16-0, 17-0. They're 16-0, 17-0.
Yeah, Drake is undefeated.
In a much weaker conference. But
in
the
a
Bonnies
much weaker conference.
If
But the Bonnies obviously have that one loss. If Jaron Holmes, we have a situation this coming week where we could be in that position once again with a win. Obviously, they were billed as the most talented team and the preseason number one to win this Atlantic 10 this year. Then along with Richmond, depending on the polling.
Let's be honest, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And we talked about Dom and Oshun stepping up this past Saturday. What does that mean for the future of this team if they can even continue to do like 80% of that? I mean, you're not going to see Dom shoot 9 of 11 and Oshun shoot 8 of 11 consistently. But if they can give you each 15, 13 a game, where does that put us? Obviously, with Kyle and Jaron carrying the offense most of the time.
Well, listen, like I said with Mike Vaccaro in our interview, this team is about 5 really good players. Pretty easily, and sometimes he's got that outside shot working too. And Jalen Shaw and Eddie Creel have given us some valuable minutes at times as well. But it's really the main starting 5 that gets the vast majority of the workload. So it'll be interesting to see what happens come tournament time, because obviously, like I said to Mike, that was definitely a problem in 2018.
Oh yeah, and it could come into play again, which is it's scary.
Much as you don't want to admit it, yes, it could obviously come into play again when you're playing games like that, especially the way that the tournament's going to be set up this year. You don't have to travel much, but I bet you that the games are going to be very close together once again. You're going to be playing 2 games in basically 2 days, depending on what time your game starts and what time the next one does, because half the time you never really even know based on the broadcast schedule. When they had to go down to Dallas from Dayton, they were gassed.
It was only like a 2 days notice.
2 days notice. They had no idea who they'd be playing for one. Actually, no, they did. Well, obviously they didn't even worry about Florida at that point. The Gators had already been scouting both UCLA and St. Bonaventure as potential opponents, but St. Bonaventure and Mark Schmidt's main focus was on UCLA. So they got that win, and then when they got to the next step, they just didn't have it left in the tank. And you can't really blame them, but it would be nice if the rotation was a little bit deeper with more support on the scoring end.
And the great thing about the Bonaventure team, probably my favorite thing about it, is the fact that unless somehow they would transfer, which I would doubt, this will be the same team next year. So even if I still think the trajectory that we're on, the path that we're on, we're probably going to make the tournament. It would take a collapse not to make it. There's only 7-8 games scheduled left. And if they went 6-2 or 7-1 down that stretch, I'm pretty sure they would be in as an at-large bid. That's just my guess.
I agree.
But that's the best thing. Even if they will somehow mess up and not make it. Whole starting 5 will be seniors. AJ and Jalen Shaw will be juniors. Maybe you get a freshman to step up next year, or
grad transfer,
there's and I'm hoping that next year will hopefully be normal, because this year Bonnie season, regardless of what happens this year,
it's
will
probably
be one of the most electric and more other than when they made it to the tournament in 2016, it would be to be one of the most hyped up teams.
Yeah, most anticipated Bonnie seasons of all time would be next year. However, let's not forget. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves right now, looking at all the way to next year. We can go even further. I kind of really didn't realize this for a while. It was always in the back of my head, but I never really kind of thought about it. The eligibility rules with COVID and everything. This squad will be eligible to play a whole nother season after next year.
So you could get 2, but I find it hard to. Do you think they would do that? Maybe there's some of them that would. I find it hard to believe everyone would. I mean, at one point you got to move on.
Of course. Now, if they did make a enormous run in the tournament next year, say Sweet 16, Elite 8, maybe
which is a little aggressive.
Oh, it's very aggressive. It's very aggressive. I'm just saying, we're not even in conference tournament play. We don't even know how we're going to face up with St. Louis this weekend. But we're looking at all the way ahead. If that were to happen, I believe that they'd be like, you know what, might as well. Most of us are going to be pros somewhere eventually. Might as well run it back one more time.
I give you that. But there is big things for this Bonnie team. We could only hope, and this will be a telling week. Obviously, we're expecting a St. Joe's victory on Wednesday. If that doesn't happen, then our whole outlook on this team changes.
Oh, absolutely.
But that St. Louis game, it's in St. Louis. If we win this game, it's full steam ahead.
Rank the Bonnies might be #1 trending on Twitter if we beat St. Louis.
But but here's the thing: if we lose by a little bit, none of us will be discouraged, because St. Louis is a really good team.
Absolutely.
But if we lose by a lot, then there's going to be thoughts in our head, because we could have easily got blown out by VCU. Luckily, we came back and won that game.
By a lot.
Good win in Richmond, but they haven't looked as strong as people thought they were at the time. There are still questions on the strength of schedule. That's why the St. Louis game on Saturday will be the biggest game of the season.
Absolutely. And, we're very much looking forward to that. It's going to be on CBS Sports this Saturday. Back-to-back weekends.
Back Saturday.
National television Bonnies. Listen, we're putting ourselves in the map this season, and thanks to Mark Schmidt and the roster they put together, Kyle, Jaron, Jalen, Oshun, and Dom in the starting lineup. It's been a testament to them and the work they've put in and the chemistry they've built, that this team's in a position to be in the top 25 college basketball teams in the nation.
Well, we can only hope, but there are other college basketball teams we have to get to. We mentioned and we gave our best 2 teams outside of Gonzaga and Baylor. But after watching this week of college basketball, it just makes me think how far and above Baylor and Gonzaga are better than the rest of the field. It will be hard for me to believe it's not Gonzaga Baylor in the national championship. It's going to be hard.
It's so funny. I watch Baylor sometimes, and like they'll just be playing around with an opponent, walking the ball up the court and stuff. And then the game will be like it'll be 11 the whole time with them just coasting. Then it'll get 7, and they'll just turn it on, start shooting corner threes, and they're just never missing. It's one of the one of the almost best college basketball teams I've seen in the past 5 years, and that's not even taking away from Gonzaga, who's arguably better with what's his name? Why did I say what's his name? Jalen Suggs and company there. The Gonzaga and Baylor are a tier above everybody else, and we discussed on the show last week who we thought the third or maybe fourth best team in the nation were, but we both kind of agreed they're not on that level yet.
No, and we both said Iowa were in their top 4, and of course they lost this past week.
Which is ridiculous.
That was a great game, though. I don't know if you were able to catch something.
I was. It was a great game and just not great for my wallet.
Yeah, you mentioned that they were that was the game you were talking about. They were road underdogs and you couldn't understand it. And
I guess I was missing something. I was missing something. The Hawkeyes did drop that game to Illinois, and Illinois is a talented basketball team. Don't get me wrong. Kofi Cockburn is among the best bigs in the country. So credit to that Illinois team for getting a statement win. That's going to help them very much when seeding time comes around.
Yeah, and I mentioned Villanova in my top 3 or top 4 last week when we talked about who's our top 4, because we both obviously had Gonzaga, Baylor, and we both had Iowa. And your 4th was Michigan, my 4th was Villanova. Mm-hmm. Those are the next 2 teams in the AP poll: 3, 4 Villanova, 4 Michigan. We just talked about how good Gonzaga and Baylor are. How many tiers are there, like a difference between the teams?
I have to pull up the AP top 25 right here and kind of separate them a little bit. But obviously, like we mentioned, Gonzaga and Baylor are number 1 and 2 in their in a tier of their own. Some people actually do believe that Baylor is the better team there, but obviously that's up for the AP voters to decide. I believe right now that I would go with a second tier of Villanova, Michigan, Iowa, and then the next tier would be Houston, Texas, Ohio State, Oklahoma. And then obviously you get to the rest of the teams in the top 25, and those could change any given day in this college basketball season. And
you mentioned Texas in that third tier. Mm-hmm. They actually host Baylor tomorrow.
Going to be a great game.
2 versus 6.
Hopefully, I'm not sure. I haven't really looked too into that. I hope Shaka Smart is back for that one.
That will be the game of the year to this point in college basketball, because we will find out. I'm not talking about entertainment wise. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about if Baylor dominates Texas at home, that just shows how strong they are.
Yeah, because Gonzaga, their only real dominance showing this season, and it wasn't even that dominant. They won by 11. Was to Iowa.
And you know what I'm sad about is Gonzaga and Baylor were supposed to play earlier this year.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The game got canceled because of COVID. I am so livid to this day that we were not be able to see those 2 teams match up in the regular season. I was livid when it happened. You just reminded me about it again. I haven't thought about it in a while, and now I'm kind of fuming. those 2 teams would have put on an absolute show. And it was the Maui Championship, correct? I believe so.
Yeah, it was. That game's always one of the best of the early college basketball season.
But I will absolutely be tuned in to that Baylor Texas game tomorrow, because, like I said, it's going to be probably the game of the year. I would, in my opinion, I would think Baylor wins, but I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped one, because it's almost even though we say how much better than they are, a team's got to lose eventually.
Oh, of course, and a team that Scott lose eventually that I'm looking at right now. They did just drop one a couple of days, just 2 games ago. Is Texas Tech. They actually have Oklahoma tonight. What is the game of the night? Oklahoma's been on an absolute tear lately, jumping up 15 spots in this week's AP poll from 24 to 9. The Oklahoma team that I've been watching, the one that played Alabama in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, they are pretty freaking good.
I mean, that Big 12 is legit, man.
I've never seen a Big 12 in my life that's actually been able to kind of keep up with the Big 10.
The
And this
Big
season
12 is probably the best conference in basketball. I mean, Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas Tech.
Yep.
West Virginia is really good. Missouri's SEC. Kansas. I
mean, Kansas is okay.
Kansas started off really strong, and they're fading.
Yeah, I mean, they did.
And then not to mention the team that's ranked 26th in the country and has the best player in college basketball, Cade Cunningham.
Oh, Cade Cunningham,
Come on. They're in that. Like, the Big 12 is loaded. That will be an all-time conference tournament.
Oh, absolutely. You're gonna have teams playing in the second round of that tournament that are gonna maybe even get bounced because of an early loss. That's really not their fault because they're playing a team that's just as good as them. But it's they're 3 seeds higher. The Big Ten, though, if you want to look at that, they're
equally good.
They are equally good. I mean,
just probably a little lower.
I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, Illinois. I mean, those are 4 teams right off the bat that I think can make the Final Four.
Now, we saw on Saturday, this is a little off what we had planned, but I want to touch on it. Tennessee blew up Kansas.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
What does that show you more of Kansas not being the team we thought they would be and the team they look like in the first 7-8 games, or is Tennessee actually that good?
I actually think Tennessee's pretty legit, and they're only 4, and they're 12-3 right now. But their conference record hasn't been, as amazing. They just have a really balanced team. Nobody on that team scores more than 11, but they also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys who score 8 points a game or more. So you can't ask for much more than that, especially at a college basketball level, because you don't want when things get tough late in the season and you need people to go to, or when teams capitalize on these star players like we might see with Cade Cunningham come tournament time. This Tennessee team will be able to attack you from so many different angles. I kind of believe that they're reminiscent of our Bonnie's team, actually.
Interesting. And now right before we had the break, one more thing I want to mention is that when was the last time you looked at the AP Top 25 and the best team in the ACC was ranked 14th?
It's been a while. And we've talked about, these past few NCAA tournaments with 8 or 9 ACC teams getting in. And this year and last year have been just absolute, plummets for the ACC.
And if you look, there's 3 teams in the ACC ranked and 6 receiving votes. So
there's still those 9 there that are probably going to make the tournament, but
it's not. I wouldn't be surprised if you. Well, okay, I would be surprised if I was going to say round 64, but I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a single ACC team remaining after a round of 32.
I absolutely agree. Now, one team that could make a little bit of noise, Georgia Tech.
That's one of the teams that just received a couple votes. They received 2.
They did.
North Carolina received 3. Louisville received 4. But other than that, it's Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Virginia that are the ones ranked.
Yeah, Florida State really isn't. Even though they're 10-3, they don't really excite me too much either. Obviously, they just had dropped the game to Georgia Tech, and Virginia is going to be Virginia. They're going to defend you. They obviously got blown out by Syracuse a couple days ago, and they still sit at 11-3. Tony Bennett's one of the best coaches in the country, and they're just going to defend you to the death. So the only team that I can believe right now that's actually pretty legit is, in my opinion, Virginia Tech, as far as the ACC goes.
The ACC is interesting. You mentioned Florida State. They do have a talented freshman, Scotty Barnes, but the way they play is so strange and different because they run deep. They have 8, 9 guys that play, 10 guys maybe even, that they just get a lot of talented players and play them equally. You don't see a real starting 5.
Yeah, that's the way that Florida State and that team has been run for a few years now. It's kind of interesting the way that they play basketball compared to the rest of the teams in the nation. But they just haven't really impressed me yet. They dropped 4 spots in this week's AP poll, but the main focus here was the fact that the ACC is just not the dominant force that it used to be.
No, I'd say it might be even worse than the Big East.
I was actually I was hoping you would say the Big East because I'm a known Big East lobbyist or supporter of that conference, as I've spent many of my formative years down in the Garden for that Thursday or Friday opening day of the Big East tournament. So that conference is definitely something that's near and dear to my heart. And I believe that the one team from that conference who's actually going to make a lot of noise is in this tournament that I had preseason as a Final Four pick, Creighton. And Marcus Zagorowski's playing as good as any guard in the country. And they're able to get out and running very quickly, but they're also able to run half-court sets. And I think that's what teams are going to need in March, is be able to diversify and kind of be able to play different games based on the matchups that you have, because you never know who you're going to play.
Yeah, and we're going to head to break now. When we come back, we got some NBA talk. Stay tuned for that. You're listening to Draft Cup with Nick Rohloff and Tyler Smith on 88.3 The Buzz. Welcome back into 88.3 The Buzz. Listen to the Director's Cut with Nick Rohloff and Tyler Smith from St. Bonaventure. We now move into This Week in This League NBA talk. We had we always talk like NBA. There's constant storylines. I mean, there's trade rumors like crazy. I'm getting sent texts that my favorite team, the Heat, is interested or not interested, has had talks with the Pelicans about possibly JJ Redick and Lonzo Ball. There's always something. But this Saturday, we had a big game. First edition of Saturday Primetime Basketball, which is usually the best game of the week every week.
Oh, absolutely.
We had Lakers Celtics. Oh, such a good game.
It was really fun, and I was actually preparing during that game for the next afternoon, where I would be calling Bonnie's women versus Dayton in a little Atlantic 10 women's basketball game. But I had the Celtics Lakers obviously on the TV screen next to that. I'm only going to talk about the end of the game. I'm not gonna harp on the fact that Kemba Walker, the guy who paid $40 million a year to be here for 4 years, is going 1 for 12 and 4 turnovers, and now I don't really know what to do with him. But we're just going to address the last play. It was very frustrating to me that not only did Jaylen Brown did get doubled after he got the steal, and then for the rest of that time, obviously Kemba got the ball and took the last shot, missed. Daniel Tice missed the tip in. I'm never going to blame Daniel Tice because I protect him like a son. But Kemba took that last shot. It was textbook cardiac Kemba. I automatically thought it was going in, and he just bricked it. And that's just, kind of been the streak that he's been on right now, is just not playing up to par. And when he's not playing up to par offensively, you can't even have him on the court. And that is just so troubling to me as a Celtics fan, because he's going to be this guy that we're going to be having in the playoffs for all these minutes. And then, like you saw with the Heat last year, they're just going to find a way to switch him on to Bam, and they're going to give Bam the ball. And now Bam's scoring 40 points a game. I can't even think about what happens if we match up against an elite big in the playoffs.
It's funny how you had that with Kemba switching on. It's almost the same thing with the Heat too. Like they would everyone switches on to Tyler Hero.
Multiple players.
They don't with Duncan Robinson and 3 buckets. But Kemba had 4 points on Saturday night, 1 of 12. Missed that. Are you worried about him? I know you just mentioned defensively, but are you worried about him offensively?
I mean, one thing you'll always be able to do as a basketball player is score. That's why Michael Beasley's come into the league back multiple times. Switch him all. Crawford sometimes gets 10-day contracts because these guys just know how to score. That's why Melo got back into the league, because you never lose that ability to score. You see guys who are out of the NBA just straight up tearing up YMCAs. And if you look at Mike Miller, who coaches at Memphis, he's still giving buckets to these guys who are playing for his college team right now, and he's making them look lost out there. So you never really lose your ability to score, and that's what Kemba Walker's best at. So I'm not really worried about his capabilities offensively. I am interested to know what's going on with his knee, because obviously he came back and they said he was healthy, but and he looked good in those first few games, but that explosiveness that we saw last year is still probably just a half step behind. And when you're 5'11" and you're trying to score inside with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, it's just not going to work out super well for you. So Kemba, I believe in you, and I do think that you're going to turn it around as far as offensively goes. But I do have those worries about defense. However, you fit well with the team. You fit better than Kyrie ever did. So I believe in you, and I'm hoping to see you turn over a new leaf soon. You have the ability, so just keep the train rolling, get back into shape, and we're going to be producing at a high level. The Celtics are a great basketball team, and we just need our top guys to really step it up.
And what do you think the ceiling is on? Because you're a Celtics fan.
Yeah.
Do you think this Celtics team can make it out of the East this year?
I think a lot of teams can make it out of the East this year, to be honest. I mean, I feel like the Nets, the Sixers, and the Celtics and the Bucks all have a real shot as of now. Sorry this year on your Miami Heat, but they're currently sitting at 7-12.
Hey, I still think if the Heat make the playoffs, I would not want to play them.
I absolutely wouldn't want to play them, but they're not. They're obviously getting all their players back now, but their records as it stands isn't so great. So for the teams that are currently in the playoff picture, I would say the Celtics, Sixers, Bucks, and Nets can all win the East. Now, the Celtics are probably the least them or the Sixers are probably the least two teams that I'm confident in that scenario, just for the sole fact that the Celtics, they don't have a bench. There's no bench. We have Jeff Teague, who he doesn't even know how to play basketball anymore. Aaron Nesmith, who I really liked us taking in the draft, but he's had some early struggles. Semi Ojeleye comes in sometimes. He's actually been a pleasant surprise this year. In years past, he has not been somebody who I like seeing on the floor, but he's definitely improved a little bit this year. And then we have one or two of Daniel Tice or Tristan Thompson coming off the bench, or Robert Williams. One of those three are always going to be coming off the bench. And then obviously my boy Peyton Pritchard, when he comes back from injury, it'll be nice to add him back on the Celtics roster. And I totally honestly forgot to mention Marcus Smart's out for 2 to 3 weeks now with a grade 1 or grade 2 calf strain, however you want to put it. So that's something to definitely monitor, because he's a guy that if he's not on our team, suiting up for the playoffs, that there's no chance we can make it out of the East.
And we talked about you mentioned the top 4 teams, the Sixers, Nets, the Bucks, the Celtics. The Nets just lost a tough one, 149-146, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Are you concerned with their defense? It's a real issue.
It is a real issue.
They're giving up 117 a game. They are scoring 122 a game.
Which is fine.
But since the Harden trade, they've been giving up 125 a game, which is probably because Taurean Princeton and Jared Allen were traded in that deal.
And let's not forget, Karis LeVert wasn't, a slapstick defender either.
Yeah. Are you concerned? Because a lot of people are, and I'm not if I would be a Nets fan, because I could almost put a guarantee on it right now. They will have a defensive big going into the playoffs, whether it be through a trade, a buyout, names like Andre Drummond come up.
Andre Drummond, who's already pegged to just be a net, I guess.
Yeah,
everybody wants to play there.
Like I saw a report that's just an inevitable until Andre Drummond gets bought out and joins the Nets.
Like what?
Like I truly think maybe it's not Andre Drummond's situation, but I truly think they will end up getting another center that can defend, because DeAndre Jordan is fried chicken down in the post. And
I can't believe that, by the way. Like I guess when he was with the Clippers, I mean, he was averaging 2-3 blocks a game. I mean,
he's a little washed.
The ball.
He's a little washed. He can still catch some lobs, but he's a little washed. But also during playoff time, this is the regular season.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the regular season is different from the postseason. Yes, the interior defense is a problem. Like I said, I think they will get it addressed. But when it comes to the playoffs, if you think that Kyrie, Harden, and KD are going to defend in the playoffs like they are now, you're out of your mind. It's gonna get better. It might still not be good enough to win a title. You never know, but
they can also put up points with anybody.
I tweeted out last night, the Nets don't care about defense. They're just very confident they will outscore you.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I'm mentioning our interview with Mike Vaccaro. If you look at his Twitter, he said after the Clippers ended up beating the Knicks, that the Clippers might put up 200 on the Nets. So once they run into a team like that that's almost to the level of their offensive production, yes, this could be cause for concerns. But right now, it's the regular season. These guys don't care. Let's be honest. This is a soap opera league where the NBA, the regular season does not matter unless you're fighting for a playoff spot. And the Nets are in a position where they can win enough games, coasting the way they are, to be an obvious playoff choice. And once that hits, then it's just a total flip of the switch.
Also, before we move on to other NBA talk, the Bucks, they lost their past 2 games. They must have made a deal with someone where they can win every other game unless they face a Ball brother. I mean, what was it? Was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday night, Lonzo Ball scored Friday night, scored 27 points, his season high, his high in a long time against them. And then the following night, on Saturday night, LaMelo Ball scored 27. They lost the Pelicans and Hornets, who are 2 teams that aren't very good. That's just interesting to see what's up with the Bucks. They're sitting 11-8 though. What's up with that?
Yeah, the Bucks aren't playing to the level they were last year. Obviously, last year was the season where the Bucks, went full throttle during the regular season to secure that number 1 seed. Obviously, they're the way things look right now, it doesn't look like they're. I mean, they sit at 3rd place in the East. If you look at the Eastern Conference, the 2nd place Nets are 13-9. And then the 4th place Celtics are 10-8. The only real team with an actual good record is the 76ers at 15-6. And as a matter of fact, they don't really play anybody. So since they've been winning all these games, they haven't really had the most high level of competition. But aside from beating the Lakers. But yeah, it's interesting to see that the Bucks aren't having their normal regular season dominance that we've seen for the past few years.
Yeah, what do you make of the NBA this year? It's an odd year, obviously with the no fans.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that plays a part in this? Because when you're 20 games through the season, 20 games or more, 11-8 would usually be barely in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Why is it in the East the 3 seed, and even if you look at the West, 12-8 and 8-6 are the 4 or 5 seed. Why do you think there's so many teams hovering around 500? Is it because there's no home fans? Is that the reason?
I don't think it's because of no home fans. I'd like to kind of believe that it's because the league's gotten more parity. Even though the Nets, have this big 3 like we've probably never seen before as far as individual talent goes between 3 teammates, but there's a lot of really competitive teams in the league. Like you mentioned, the Hornets, like they're in a lot of games. Like they have Gordon Hayward, who's looking like he's returning to all-star form. LaMelo's been playing as good as any rookie this season. And then you got guys like P.J. Washington, Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, who provide off the bench. And you know what? Nobody's talking about the Hornets as a playoff team, but you know what? They're competitive. The Hawks are competitive. The Cavs are even in a bunch of games. They're only 9-11, and I thought they had the worst roster in the league before we entered the season.
Yeah, you mentioned the Hornets and the Cavs. If the season ended today, they would be the 7th and 8th seeds at 9-11. You mentioned parity. I do think it plays into there's not much of a home crowd, so there's not a home advantage anymore.
So maybe you could attribute both of our reasonings to the way that the league's been so even this year.
But I think the main thing is why you'll see the teams is the COVID protocols. A lot of people have had people miss. The Heat are a prime example. Your Celtics, they got off to a hot start. Now they're only 10-8 because Tatum missed 6-7 games.
Yeah, he missed a lot. It's funny how that you see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are averaging 27 and 26 respectively. But they were out, they weren't playing together for half of it, so that allowed Jaylen Brown to obviously up his points per game. So it's funny to see the averages that we've seen so far this season between players, and like you said, the records that we see between teams.
All right, let's move on because we only got 9 minutes. There's a couple things I want to touch on before we get to our ending pick and rolls to our 2 best bets of the night. There's always talented players on very bad teams that seem to be wasting their career away. I want to ask you, because I have
Bradley Beal.
See that as you think, what players need to be traded if they want to preserve their prime? Because Bradley Beal's 27, I believe.
Yeah, he's been in the league since, what was it, the Anthony Davis draft?
I believe so.
Oh my gosh, he's been in the league as long as Anthony Davis. That's kind of freaky to me.
He said he wants to win Washington. Do you buy that? And I hope for his sake he doesn't.
What?
He's just throwing smoke.
Did you see him in the first half of the game a couple days ago?
Yeah, but then they won.
Yeah, then they beat the Nets. So ridiculous. I'll always say Russell Westbrook's going to show up for a game when he's playing Kevin Durant. And he did. He actually had 41 and then a masterful last couple minutes by the Wizards. But in the first half of that game, Bradley Beal looked like he wanted a ticket out of Washington that second.
Yeah, and then I read a report today. I don't know how. I read these reports all the time. I don't know if they're always true, but I read them. I get intrigued by them, and I have to mention them. There's apparently some people in the Wizards organization that believe Beal's more happy this year than he was last year. Is that possible?
They traded John Wall. How could he be more happy? That was his boy.
I don't know. Bradley Beal, free Bradley Beal, and I'm not
definitely free Bradley Beal.
I'm not saying that because the Heat would probably be at the top of the list for him. I'm not just saying it because of that reason.
Mm-hmm.
He legitimately is going to waste his career away in Washington. That team is not close to sniffing the playoffs. They should be, but they're not.
Yeah.
And he's got to get out of there. But a play that first comes to mind, and I am a huge fan of this player.
Wonder who you're going to say.
Zach LaVine?
Oh, okay.
You thought I was going to go with a different player, didn't you?
I did. So Zach LaVine actually is a great pick, and he's also, well, he was actually drafted in 2014, so he actually is probably getting up there in age a little bit.
He's 20. I think he's 25.
Yeah, he was a freshman. He was actually the youngest player coming out of that draft. But yeah, Zach LaVine, he's absolutely one of these players that needs to get out of Chicago. What do you got, Nick?
I think he needs to get onto a team that needs perimeter scoring. And no joke, Miami would be a good fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have Jimmy and Bam as your big dynamic duo, who are both better defenders than they are at offense, but both can score, both can put up 22, 23 a game, but with that defense side, and then you add someone who could drop 30 a game, that would be one of the best trios in basketball. I saw an Instagram poll, and as you know, NBA Instagram gets wild.
So wild.
But there was a poll that
almost
said,
criminal.
Would Beal on the Heat create the best big three fit-wise in the NBA? And it was actually, I think, 49-51 in favor of no. But it was there.
Still interesting. That's a very interesting question because I mean Bradley Beal is the go-to scorer. You'd have Jimmy Butler for the defense facilitation, and then you have Bam down low. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't agree with it, but it's really not the hottest take in the world.
No, it's not. I thought about it, and it's when you look at NBA Instagram. If any of you out there do, you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, you got to prepare yourself before you look at some of these posts because they are ridiculous.
No, it's if you want to go out, if you're an NBA fan and you want to have a laugh, go on Instagram, find NBA accounts, and look at the debates.
Look at the trade proposals they throw out sometimes.
It's absolutely fantastic. But those are the two names that came to mind right away is Beal and Levine, two talented shooting guards, 25, 26 years old, that could put up 30 a game. Bradley Beal's averaging 34. Levine's averaging 27. That I don't want them to be on these bad teams forever because they won't be remembered as one of the best players in the league. Because if you put Levine or Beal on a contending team, they're automatically thought of as one of the best in their position.
Of course, Bradley Beal is actually – I give him a ton of credit. You know, a couple of years ago, he wasn't even in the conversation of best shooting guard in the league. But this season, he's leading the NBA in scoring at 35 a game. James Harden obviously holds that title because he's just been a generational talent. But Bradley Beal has vaulted himself into the first tier of NBA shooting guards, along with Harden, and I personally would put Klay Thompson in that tier as well. But Beal, I give a lot of credit to this season. Now, two players real quick that I wanted to say you need to get out of their current situations. Their careers are being wasted there. One, this is only 1 year into his career, but Zion Williamson.
He's out already?
Not out already, but listen, he's not going to win a championship in New Orleans. It's not going to happen. And as much as I'd love to see him and Brandon Ingram win a championship, if they ever were to do that, it wouldn't be in New Orleans. I don't think the organization is run to the point of being a championship, franchise. Because not only do you need a talented roster, a good coach, you need a culture inside the organization. And New Orleans has been a losing culture ever since they've joined the league. Ever since the New Orleans Hornets were in the league, Chris Paul couldn't win a playoff series there. It's just not a great organization if you're looking to win. And that's why I think Zion is probably going to be on his way out, sooner rather than later. One more player that I'm going to talk about, and he's not going to leave his team, but I do believe that he would fare better in an all-time stance than where he is now. Damian Lillard. I just don't think that the Blazers would ever be in a position to win a championship. They've gotten to the Western Conference Finals before, but that's obviously the ceiling for that team in any given year. They're basically running the same crew back for the past 5 years with different pieces flip-flopped in and out, but Lillard he's not going to win a championship in Portland.
I agree with you. He'll go down as one of the better players in history.
Of course.
To not win a ring. I think he'll get the Melo treatment at the end of his career, I believe. Yeah. That's really interesting what you said about Zion, though, because they have so much talent that doesn't win. It doesn't make sense. Because B.I. is a great scorer, and Zion's been unguardable this year, but they didn't build around them. You need shooters. They have J.J. Redick, but he barely plays. You've got Steven Adams, who's great at rebounding, but you need someone who can shoot at that 5 spot alongside Zion. Like, the best fit for him as a center, other than like Karl-Anthony Towns and like Anthony Davis or something like that, is Miles Turner. Like, that would be a great fit because he's a 3-and-D center, which is you don't see often. But that'd be a great fit for them. They'll never trade him, so he'd have to leave in free agency. Mm-hmm. So and obviously the rookie deals is it 4 years plus 1 more year of team option?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so he wouldn't be able to leave until he's 24?
Oh, no, actually, it's the 1 more year, not a team option. It's restricted free agency. So essentially, it's a team option.
Yeah, because they get to choose if they want to re-sign him. Right?
Yes, but obviously, some players, get to that point, and then they're like, you can obviously match my deal, but I don't want to be here anymore. You got to trade me. So maybe that's the situation Zion will find himself in because we've never seen a player since. I mean, obviously, we had Wiggins, who was very highly touted coming out of Kansas, coming out of high school, and Zion's getting that same treatment right now. We'll see how his career unfolds over these next few years in New Orleans, and see what happens as far as what he wants to do. Lastly, before we end this week's show, it's been an amazing show, but before we get out of here, we got to get to our NBA picks and rolls, our 2 best bets of the night. Nick, why don't you kick it off with your first?
I'm going Trailblazers plus 10. Game starting right now.
Yep.
In Milwaukee. Milwaukee, I mentioned they struggled 2 games in a row. 10 points is a lot. I'm going with the Blazers. I think Lillard, he'll keep it close.
Oh, absolutely. And my first game that I'll be going with is, I'm gonna get on the side of Vac on this one. I'm gonna take the Knicks plus 3.5 against the Bulls. They're on the road, but that's Tom Thibodeau's first return. It's gonna be his first game in Chicago as the head coach of the Knicks, and you know what? He'll have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder playing in the United Center. So I'm taking the Knicks in that one.
And my last pick, we only do 2. It worked last time. I bet against the Mavericks. The Mavericks are struggling. I'm
Very
going
much so.
Suns plus 2 against the Mavericks. I'm taking 2 underdogs because even though Devin Booker I don't think is playing, I still think they win because the Mavericks are in a funk, to say the least.
Yeah, Mavericks the way that they're playing is not looking good. Lastly, my last pick of the night will be Nuggets minus 7.5 versus the Pistons. The Pistons actually do make a lot of games competitive. They actually even blew the Lakers out a couple weeks ago without Anthony Davis. But this Nuggets team is actually turning up just at the right time right now. Jokic is playing like an MVP candidate. He might even be the presumptive MVP candidate right now. So the Nuggets are just playing their best basketball of the season so far, and that's why I'm going to take them to win it by 8 or more tonight.
I'll tell you what, next Monday we're going to have a great debate about MVP talk. I wanted to put it in today, but we had so much going on we couldn't because there's some interesting things being said, and we'll see how it waits a week for that. But that'll do it for today's show. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching, guys, for the first ever stream. You're listening to Nick Rohloff and Tyler Smith on Dress Cup from 88.3 The Buzz.